Welcome to the Kingdom Educators Podcast, where we empower Christian teachers to grab a hold of heaven's hope-filled perspective so you can activate transformational impact in your classroom and community. I'm your host, Jessica Glover, and I warmly welcome you to wake up to your strategic placement as a kingdom educator, anointed by the Creator and equipped by all of heaven to release the radical goodness of God that will transform lives and reshape education. Welcome back to the Kingdom Educators Podcast, everybody. Hasn't this been an incredible unit? We've been talking about self-talk and how that impacts our own thinking, but also our environment around us. And today I have a special guest with me, Jessica Klicka, and she comes to us from the world of counseling, but has a background in teaching. But the reason why I asked her to come on was because as we were talking, I became very aware of, self-talk is very much connected to the way that our bodies feel. And sometimes in the world of education, we forget to do simple things like, I need to go to the bathroom like 3 hours ago, or I'm feeling exhausted, but I'm not paying attention and taking care of myself. And so I thought it would be really great to have Jessica on today to talk about how we can do a better job caring for ourselves so that internal thing that's happening can actually help us improve our self-talk more easily if we pay attention to our needs. So welcome, Jessica, to the Kingdom Educators Podcast.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yes. Okay. So I want to make sure and not miss this, but you have a background in education, which makes this a fun connection for you to be here with us. Will you share a little bit about that and then move us into self-regulation?
Yes, absolutely. So I knew from a very early age that I wanted to be a teacher. So from the time I was in elementary school and I taught middle schoolers, which is also a place I never thought I'd find myself, is in middle school classrooms.
Me too.
It's all kinds of fun, as you guys know, that are also middle school teachers.
Yes.
It's all the crazy. But no, and then I fell in love with them. I student taught that first year in 7th grade and I thought I'm never leaving. So This is the best place. Yeah, and I did 8 years, guys, with doing the middle schoolers. And I don't know, I think it was probably 4 or 5 years into it, we realized we also were like counselors, in the classroom. And so just through my own journey and different things God had placed on my heart, he said, you need to be there on a deeper level for these kiddos and their families. And so pursued the master's degree. And then after a few years of doing both, counseling and teaching.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I don't recommend that one. That one's hard. I did it before I had kids. So that's the only way. And
you probably got counseling while you were doing all that, right?
Oh, yes.
Oh my goodness.
That's a must. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's often a requirement you have to do while you're going through your program. And that's a great requirement. I'd had other counseling before, but you need it through the thick and thin. So so here we are. And now I've been doing counseling for 11 years and I miss the classroom and I love getting to help support teachers. So this is awesome.
Now, are your own kids in school right now?
Yes, I have a kindergartner and a 2nd grader now. So my baby is now in kindergarten and off and away.
Yes.
Like big boys. So seeing it from the other side.
I know. Isn't that so different? Oh, man. Okay. So Jessica, you work for a Christian counseling company out of Boulder, Colorado, but you live in St. Augustine, Florida, which is so cool to be able to have that remote position. Will you share with us? You work with teachers too, right?
I have teachers. We help. We have a wide range of people that we help, but I know I've often gone into schools and do teachings for in-services for teachers and just supporting them as they're figuring out what they're doing, especially coming out of COVID years. There was so much that teachers were carrying and trying to manage. So really emphasized it then and still love to help them with what they're doing even now.
So good. So will you move us into what does it mean to self-regulate and why do we even need to do that? What does that look like for us?
So I'll just jump right in, you guys. I like to tell everybody I like to nerd out and just start going into a lot of the nervous system science. So we operate within either a hyper, which is our sympathetic nervous system. That's people know that as our fight or flight. And then we have our hypo, which is our parasympathetic nervous system, which is our collapse mode. And throughout the day, we actually are meant, God's design is that we fluctuate back and forth.
Okay.
And that in the middle is regulation. And so the visual is like a ramp that we're on, and we go on one side and then we swing to the other. And the idea is to try to stay in the pocket in that middle regulation as much as we can. That's where we have clarity of thought. That's where we have things like we can articulate how we're doing and how we're feeling. If we go to either side too hard, we get hijacked. And often people are sitting in places of like the anxiety is that, oh my goodness, I have things coming up in the future. So I'm thinking about prepping for the next class, or I'm thinking about I have to do lunch duty later, or, oh no, I have to do, detention after school and I didn't prep for this. So we're hijacked in the future. Or right, that hypo, we get hijacked into the past. Darn, I shouldn't have said what I did to this parent. Now here I am feeling really bad or remorseful, or, all of those things that we go backwards. So the idea is that what we're going to talk about, or I'm going to share today, is about how to stay in the present and attach to ourselves as much as we can, which helps us stay, like we'll talk about, grounded and present in our thoughts.
That's so good. I think it's just good for us to be aware that there's both sides. Because even while I'm thinking, I'm like, man, in a day, in the teaching world, it is really like all over. But like you said, just staying in that center so you can be present and not getting pulled backwards or forwards, but finding that middle ground is the healthy place. I love that.
And the other thing I'll add too is that we go into often a autopilot mode. And this one's really, I think, at different times given throughout the day, whether it's when we are driving to work and we're just kind of in our own thoughts, we don't pay attention really to what's going on around us or our environment. And then once we get our day going, how often we're just like in routine. And we're thinking about, again, with the next thing, okay, I've set up their bell work. I'm getting this lesson going. I'm going to have this handout we're going to go over. We're going to have some discussion time. And then they're going to be doing homework. And we're just boom, boom, boom. And we're not really paying attention, one, to ourselves, or really how well are we really gauging even the kids, in the classroom, and checking in on that and slowing ourselves down and really noticing what's coming up for us and for them.
Yeah.
So,
because the demands, I think, feel so intense sometimes.
Yes.
And maybe,
oh my gosh, the clock dictates so much too. I remember just living by that, being like, okay, I've got 10 minutes, 5 minutes. And, you feel very structured, and you have to. So to be able to breathe in between moments and to really take time and space for ourselves, even during the class time, is tricky.
Yeah. You mentioned during our pre-talk that there's this thing called synergistic play, and it helps us to grow healthier. And you were even suggesting like this would be a good thing to use with students as well. How is this a self-care strategy, and how could we implement it to gain more health in our lives?
So I'll share that synergistic play therapy it's a type of play therapy that I use not only with my littles when I got trained in it, was really to help do play therapy. But what I learned through the course of being trained and then getting my certification is that it's really for every age. And I actually use it probably more with my adults. I kind of chuckle when I bring it up in the therapy room of, hey, can I introduce some play therapy techniques to you? And we just laugh because we're all, I think, children at heart, but we're all human. And so what we learn about in synergistic play therapy is a lot of nervous system, a lot of co-regulation. We learn attunement, and some of that, well, it really starts with learning about ourselves and connecting to ourselves and knowing, okay, how is my body feeling right now? What flags is it giving me? And what do I need to do with that? Because if I'm not present with myself, I'm really probably not present with other people. And, in the playroom, it's me and a kiddo. In the classroom, right? It's us and our students. And so slowing ourselves down and going, okay, body, where you at? All right, emotions, how you feeling? Because I'll sometimes joke with my clients that it's like we just exist in our head and we forget that everything else is still there.
Yeah.
And it's telling us information, right, all day. And it's very easy to disconnect, from it for a lot of different reasons. So what we do is we talk about how us as the adults in a space, we represent the external regulators. And I love this because I talk to parents about this in the home. us as the therapists in the counseling room, and then teachers in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And so our capacity, whether you guys have heard about your window of tolerance, if it's wide and we've got good capacity, the others in the space with us are going to oscillate within it just like us. And
Okay.
so if our window is wide, they'll feel that, they'll have more capacity too, and they can kind of oscillate within that. If it gets squished on any given day at any given time, now our window is tiny and everybody inside of it is like little ping pong balls, right, to everybody, and we feed off of each other's energy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll give a quick example.
Can I ask real quick though, Jessica, when you're
Sure.
saying that, does that mean oscillating between the hypo and the
Yes, the hyper. Yeah.
Is that so? If we are going way over this way or way over that way, then our students will do the same thing. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, greater capacity.
Okay.
It's both.
Okay.
Because we're willing to kind of feel both, right? When you're saying that we're oscillating through,
Okay. Mm-hmm.
and it is stress level. So it's both, I would say, to answer that's a great question. I tell adults, right? So whether it's parents, in this case, all of you awesome educators, the more you're attuned to yourself, aware of where you're at and what you're going through, your window is going to feel better. It's going to feel wider. It's going to feel like there's more capacity.
Okay.
And so one instance might feel one way, and all of a sudden, if your window is shrunk, you feel more irritable, right? You're more on edge. Because I even remember a specific day when I was teaching, and I had my grandfather was in the hospital, and I knew I was feeling less capacity at that day. We were more on edge. We were waiting for calls from the hospital. And this is something I think I would talk about maybe later, but I'll just say it here, is naming it to tame it. Tell your student, hey, I'm having a day.
Yeah.
I'm a little more emotional, and I was very honest with my students. I said, my grandpa is in the hospital. If I'm not really here well, or if I feel a little more stressed to you guys, that's why.
And they probably appreciate that.
Yeah, because then they sit in that and go, oh, okay. And then we move together, and they kind of have that consideration of each other.
Yeah.
Instead of just trying to hold it together and then feel that tension from me and go, why is Mrs. Klicka shooting darts with her eyeballs at me? So.
Yeah. So with the synergistic play, that helps us to kind of find more regulation, right? It's providing space. What would be like a practical example of a way? What would be something we could do to help ourselves and maybe help students?
So within this, what we're going to look at is a lot of our body. And so a lot of sensory pieces come into play. And so, and actually it could be beyond that. But when I was thinking about that, especially at any age, elementary, middle school, high school, is going, okay, body, what are some things that you really need? And I'll tell you, our smell is amazing at this one. Our olfactory system is our quickest grounding tool. It's actually the only sense that can bypass our thalamus and go right into the core. Yeah, it's amazing. So if there's ever these moments of like dysregulation or again, kind of irritability or just anxiety, having a really awesome go-to smell, super awesome and effective. Having tactile things for yourself, whether it's even taking your shoes off and just having your toes kind of dig into the carpet. At school, I don't know, I would often talk or teach sometimes without shoes on and just embrace it and tell the kids, as long as your feet aren't completely gross, and I had middle school boys, then we're all welcome to take our shoes off and dig our feet into the ground together. Because it's great to invite them into it too. And having music on at different times. I don't know if that's always allowed in classrooms, but sometimes having just some low instrumental music.
Yes.
I really feel that helps kind of ground. Yeah, so a lot of the physical, and then even just checking in and going, all right, how am I emotionally? And just telling ourselves, today is a hard day, or I'm feeling extra squished today. And just acknowledging it and knowing where it's coming from and validating that with ourselves can be really huge.
Do you even recommend for teachers to go beyond that in the moment in terms of recognizing or acknowledging the feeling and then going, okay, I'm going to give myself more grace? Or what do you recommend that they do once they acknowledge the feeling? Where do we go from there?
I chuckle because there was one, you guys have to remember middle school boys, right? That's all I
Yeah.
gotta say. I remember a specific class and they were so jittery. I think they either were coming right from lunch or PE or something. And they had all the feels, right? And I'm like, oh my goodness. So we get
And the smells.
oh, all the smells. I had a little spritzer in my desk. I'll just say that. But we would do things together. And so acknowledging if maybe there was more something just pent up in us, I would literally sometimes take the boys down and they would do 1 or 2 laps
Ooh,
around
that's
the
good.
gym
Yeah.
together,
Mhm.
or we'd stand up in the classroom and we'd just shake our arms out and, really just letting ourselves feel what we needed to in the moment and then move through it. Because to
Mhm.
just have it and go, okay, well, that's great. Now what? To say,
Yeah.
okay, or even as sometimes when there's just hard things going on in the world, taking and slowing down in the classroom and
Mhm.
just checking in with
Yeah.
each other and go, how are you guys really doing? This is maybe there's some hard things going
Mhm.
on. I know there's been a lot of fear, don't go too political, but like the school shootings and things that are very real to students and teachers. And
Mhm.
to just not acknowledge it is very incongruent. And to have that is important.
Mhm. I'm working with a ministry school right now, and one of the things that the director likes us to do is he calls it being hot, honest, open, and transparent.
Yeah.
And it just makes me think of that right
Oh, I
now
love that.
because it's like
Hmm.
the teacher having the freedom to say, like you did, hey guys, I'm feeling off today. My grandpa's in the
Hmm.
hospital, or whatever it is that's going on. So if we see me not acting like myself, it's because I'm internalizing some other things going on, being present,
Hmm.
but giving ourselves the freedom to do that, to be real. And then
Yes.
kids watch, right? Sometimes they pick up way more than we realize.
Yes, they're very, very aware.
But they learn how to go, oh, I have feelings, and how am
Hmm.
I going to deal with them? That I do have
Hmm.
control, self control
Hmm.
sometimes, and they're still learning
Yeah.
that very much.
Hmm.
But giving them some ways, I used to call it just letting energy out, but you're right. It is
Yeah.
like giving them a chance to run around, take a lap around the field or whatever, could be getting rid of like pent up something that's just helping them to
Hmm.
feel more loose. And then they can
Hmm.
actually learn. And sometimes it's letting go of something hard
Hmm.
and actually
Yeah.
understanding what's going on.
One of the main principles that we have for synergistic play therapy is authenticity, because without that, our brain just feels hijacked of that incongruency. And if you tell me, hey, everything's great or fine, and yet that's not what I'm getting from you, it just is going to hijack and it lingers. And so then we're really not present and
Mhm.
attuned to each other because there's that barrier.
Do you have any testimonies of maybe teachers you worked with where they weren't aware of how they were feeling or how their body was, but once they got a hold of just the thought of, oh, there's actually a continuum within me.
Mhm.
And sometimes my
Yeah.
bandwidth is wide and sometimes it is small. Like, how much
Hmm.
change have you seen, or do you have any testimonies of what they did to make
Yeah.
that switch?
It's funny. It's a mama, so I don't know if that can resonate too versus like
Yeah.
a teacher. But think about one of the ladies I've been meeting with for a while now, and she has an awesome testimony. She, has a history in her life of abuse from her mom growing up, and just a lot of mental hijack and things that she feels like she always had to do for everybody else and
Mm-hmm.
not anything for her, or she got the leftovers.
Mm-hmm.
And she's got several kids and a husband. And so one of the things that we've been working on is how to acknowledge what she needs so
Oh, that's
that
good.
she can be there, right, for her kids and her husband. And as simple, and you guys can kind of chuckle, but it was such a big breakthrough, even when there was one day where her husband left his dishes and on the table, and she said, hey, can you actually put those in the dishwasher? I
That's
mean,
good.
so, so
Yeah.
simple,
Yeah.
but so true of like, I just need to acknowledge that I don't have to do it and I don't have to do everything, and you can. And what that has led to these massive shifts for herself and her family, her career. I mean, it's just
Mm.
rippled out when it feels like sometimes so simple of just acknowledging, oh my goodness, this is who I am. Often our identity can get wrapped up, as whether it's teachers, right, in our careers, or as husbands, wives, parents. And so
Mhm.
to say, I deserve to having my needs met too, and
Yeah.
that will help me be even more there for those that I'm serving,
Yeah.
family, students.
Ooh,
Hmm.
that's huge, Jessica, because I just think
Yeah.
about in the buildings that I worked in, often there was, I want to say a savior complex but it also led
Uh-huh.
to victim mentality. So like,
Yes.
I'm doing all these things for people, but yet I'm lifting myself up for all of the ways that I've self-sacrificed in order to take care of
Yes.
people. I remember sniffing it out as a young teacher and going, this is so sick because
Mm-hmm.
if I'm getting my identity out of pouring myself out more than I want to, then I become this
Mm-hmm.
sacrifice that didn't want to happen even. And then I'm
Yeah.
resentful to kids, my colleagues, my administrator, whatever it is that I didn't say no to. And then it becomes this like
Yeah.
kind of gross codependencies.
Yeah.
And then I'm down this slippery slope. And I sometimes
Mm-hmm.
even say at the end of the day, especially, but during the day, like letting go of the stuff. Like Jesus said, come to me, all you are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. But we can take on
Mm-hmm.
the cares of the world and all the stuff. And I
Mm-hmm.
call it ungodly responsibility for people.
Yeah.
But it's like
Yep.
I remember at the end of the day, I would like literally get in my car and I would wipe my shoulders off, just
Mm-hmm.
off both
Yep.
sides and just go, God, I just give you. And I would lay out all the things that I felt like I had picked up that day. And I felt like in the
Mm-hmm.
car, I sometimes even open the windows to let it out, like this is the visual for me, like the wind in my hair, I'm
Yes.
done. But that I
Mm-hmm.
don't have to heal anyone. I don't have to fix anything. I just came and did my job. I carried this presence of Jesus into my classroom. I got to be his hands and feet, but he's the one who brings healing and freedom and breakthrough in families. And even if I have a kid, couch surfing because mom doesn't have a home, I can't fix that necessarily.
Yeah.
And especially if God hasn't asked me, because sometimes we get our
Mm-hmm.
noses in things that we're really not supposed to, and we get ourselves
Yeah.
buried where we become incapacitated by not caring for
Mm-hmm.
ourselves because we're caring so much
Mm-hmm.
for other people. And I
Yes.
think that's the huge part of what you do. Jessica is
Mm-hmm.
reminding people to be aware of like, where are you at right now?
Yeah.
Hey,
Yes. How are
teacher,
you?
are you loving yourself?
I know. Well, and I love what you said. And that's actually like my life verse, what you just said there from Matthew. I thought, oh,
Yeah.
I love it because it's so true. And even one of my awesome admin gals, who's become one of my best friends on my team, said in one of my reviews a couple years ago, she goes, I think Jessica believes that she has to be everything to everyone. And
Mm-hmm.
that's just not true. That's the Lord's. And
Mm-hmm.
so for us too, as we go into whatever space, to tell ourselves, this is the Lord's. And I've had professors say you got to pray over your space at the end of your day and shut the door and leave it at his feet,
Ooh, that's good.
and
I
yeah,
love that. Say
yeah.
that again one more
hmm
time. This is good.
So pray over your space. Like for us, he'd say, pray over your files of your people. I envision, you guys praying over your desks or
Yeah.
your homework files or, whatever pieces you have,
Yeah.
and then shutting the door and saying, Lord, they're yours.
Yeah. You're
Yeah.
physically saying goodbye. Okay. I'm going to
hmm
go take care of
Yeah.
myself now, get some
Yes.
exercise, breathe, eat food, be with my family, have friendship,
Yeah. Yes.
have a life.
Transition. Right.
Yes.
All the pieces.
Yes.
Mm,
Well, you talked a little bit about grounding our nervous system. And when
yeah.
you're talking about that, I know the first time I was like, oh, this makes me think of like grounding like electricity so that it's not
Yeah.
hot wires flying everywhere. Will you talk a little bit more about this? I mean, you talked about taking off our shoes, letting
hmm
our feet sink in the ground. Are our students to be able to do that if it doesn't smell too
hmm
much?
Right.
But
Yes.
what does that really do? I know you love science.
Yeah. So really what it's doing is I love talking about how much our brain is doing and firing at any, given second. There's billions, if not trillions, right, of firing. And so the best case, oh, you guys are going to cringe at the statistic. The best attunement that the most aware caregiver, teacher, right, parent, any of the roles we're in with someone else, the best we can do is 30% in the
Ooh,
pocket. I
ooh,
know. It's really
wow.
sad. So, to also tell ourselves to do the best we can, how do we stay connected to ourselves? And so, again, I'll say it's so much through the body. And in therapy, we call it bottom up because it
Mm-hmm.
goes from our limbic center in the back of
Okay.
our brain to our
Okay.
front, to our prefrontal. And so often we want to exist from top to bottom, which is hard because our thought patterns get hijacked by our emotional state, our limbic center, and our
Okay.
physical state. So to be able to really start with the limbic center, start with your emotion state, start with your physical, and
Mm-hmm.
then travel up will help with that grounding piece of it. So that's where the body comes into play and go,
Okay.
okay, am I acknowledging all the things you said, that
Mm-hmm.
I'm tired or that I'm hungry or, I'm uncomfortable in these, high heels. So I'm going to kick them off
Mm-hmm.
during a break instead of just saying, you know what, I have to buckle down and just push through because you're disconnecting from yourself. And that's not helpful at the end of the
Mm-hmm.
day. It stores and it builds on us. And that's where another thing I'll throw out is a book called Burnout. And it's written by twin sisters. And there's a podcast I could talk about from Brene Brown called Unlocking Us. But they talk about how, and they even mentioned this, you guys, I was in the store listening to the podcast and I stopped by the chips when they mentioned this because I thought, oh my gosh, this is real. They said, you ever get to a break, right? Even as teachers, they said you get to a holiday break and all of a sudden you're just sick. You get a cold. And I was like, yes, every time. Or
Mm-hmm.
summer break, right? Christmas break. And they said, what happens is we take all those things we ignore
Mm-hmm.
throughout our day, throughout our weeks and months, and our body still takes it in, all those things. And we disengage, we don't acknowledge. And then at the end, and we have a break, guess what? That trailer full of all the things we've been storing comes and slams into us and goes,
Oh,
hi, remember me? I'm
yeah.
still here. And
Oh,
we get sick. Our body gets hijacked because it
yeah.
says, you're not going to ignore me anymore.
Oh my
Ah,
gosh. And then there's the
mm-hmm,
whole side with physical health in terms of what we eat, because sugar brings our immunity down. And so our immune
yep.
system is fighting
Oh,
just to keep moving because we've not been caring for our bodies or our thoughts.
mm-hmm,
And then that
yep.
just ramps everything up even more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just spins it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So do you recommend, because I'm just thinking of some like simple things that maybe even people could begin doing, like thinking of how to let go of the day. There's the wipe off your shoulders, like I
Yeah.
was talking about, but even giving
Mm-hmm.
yourself, I'm going to walk around the building during lunch break for 5 minutes
Yes.
and even prayer walking. And
Yeah, this is awesome. And I again do one more book throw out
yeah,
is a
please.
book called The Power of Full Engagement. The book was written by Olympic coaches. They talk about in high performing that our athletes, and I always like to use Michael Phelps because everybody remembers him, that if you were to ask Michael Phelps, hey, let's go swim and do sprints for 8 hours, he's not going to make it the full 8 hours. He's going to blah, 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 right, and drown. And so what they do is they talk about high intensity interval training and that it involves sprinting and recovery,
Mhm.
sprinting and recovery. And yet for us in our world as teachers, we ask ourselves, hey, let's go out and just sprint through your day and never stop or never really have a recovery moment. And so it leads to burnout and compassion
Mhm.
fatigue and all these different things that come at us. So
Yeah.
their suggestions are pay attention to what goes into those recovery moments, just like you're saying,
Yeah.
and they don't have to be huge. I often talk to people and they're like, oh, I've got a vacation, 2 weeks. I'm pushing until then. I thought, oh man, you don't have to wait for a full week off. You can
Hmm.
do it all throughout your day. And so looking for moments where it is a 5-10 minute break,
Hmm.
really actually taking a lunch. I know it's a chronic thing with the
Yes.
teacher land. We just work through our lunch,
Yeah.
whether because we have lunch duty or because we're sitting there grading papers, trying to get as much done as we can. And we stay in our classroom even, or we isolate, looking at, all right, what are things that I need? And I call them my 4 buckets. And they talk
Mhm.
about this in the book too, is our physical, our mental, our emotional, and our spiritual, and asking ourselves, which of my buckets needs a little attention? Where
Yeah.
can I pour some things in? And what does that look like? And just like you said, like doing a prayer walk, you're potentially hitting your physical and
Hmm.
your spiritual, maybe even your emotional, because you go, man, Lord, I just need to surrender this because it's weighing on my heart. So
Yeah.
you're hitting multiple buckets in a 5-10 minute prayer walk and maybe listening to some worship music. So,
Yeah. Oh, that's
mm-hmm.
really good. Yay. Are there any other practical strategies, Jessica, that you would recommend for helping us to continue to find keys that would help loosen the pressure of the day?
I think the big thing is telling ourselves it's okay to slow down. It's okay to take,
That's good.
some space. It's okay to turn off the noise. And
Mm.
that's something, that even through that synergetic play therapy, she would talk about how often we fill our space with busyness, with noise, distraction. And that really keeps us out of taking and really notice our stuff. So really saying, all right, I'm going to dedicate time here, here, and here. And I'm going to turn off the distractions. I'm going to turn off the radio, even as I'm driving. Oh my goodness, that's a challenge. But to sit in it and go, okay, I'm just going to sit with myself and the Lord, and I'm going to feel what I'm feeling in my body. I'm going to acknowledge my emotional state right now, and I'm going to enter the day, right, with a full bucket, and at the end of the day too, to just say, how do I transition, out of it, leave things with the Lord. He said, brush it off and go have an enjoyable evening where you're not taking all the stressors of your day home with you.
Yeah. And I would just encourage Kingdom educators here too to ask the Lord how you de-stress well, because sometimes we forget to even recognize how we best de-stress.
And I tell people, find things that are restorative and not just keeps you at the same level, because often we've depleted throughout the day and we sit down, and I hear it all the time. Well, I got home and I just turned on Netflix, and it keeps them, but it's not restorative. So what is pouring in to your buckets, not just keeping them at the same level?
That's a really good reminder. I was thinking of one more as a reminder as I've been in subbing a little bit. And that's that I think we have to be aware as educators that there can be a competition or comparison, and comparison can kill, especially when it comes to whether we take the breaks or not. Because if all of our teammates are working through lunch and we know we're going to blow up that afternoon if we don't take a break, or we need to eat because our glucose levels are jacked, then we need to do that and allow ourselves to take the break and take care of ourselves. And I actually wonder if it would set healthy precedents among, and even them going, wow, she has, or he has very good boundaries. Maybe I should try that. You might actually encourage more health.
I love this. You could take this one. They call that comparative suffering. It's not, I know, no healthiness comes out of that. So to say there's not a winner of the one that suffers the most, we want to, I love what you said, set the trend, the other direction, set some boundaries. And it can get contagious, when people say, hey, let's leave the homework for a little bit. Let's go on a walk around the school and go out. We had a pond by ours, so we could go out and walk around the pond, which was so awesome.
And even commending those of you, I know there's some listeners, and I've heard you share some of this, is that when we notice our kids need to have a break or they feel too anxious, to not be afraid to put away the test prep materials. That was one of the examples that one of the teachers gave on here.
Oh, yeah.
So that the kids could spend some time on identity and purpose. And then going through encouragement, and then even making up a song together, allowing that creativity to come back and reestablishing that they're all valued. And then we come from that place, and there's so much more success in general with learning.
Yes.
But that takes, I think, trust that the learning minutes are going to be used in a way that's useful, but freeing ourselves from the ball and chain of, I have to do it this way. Cause I know I always felt that when I was teaching full time, especially in the very beginning. If I don't grade every single paper, and it's I don't know, ask the Lord. Because some of the papers, I'm not sure that they do need to be graded. It might be more for practice, and it might be better if they graded them, not you, the students.
Yeah. Oh, and everybody loved a good completion grade once in a while. Yes. To just say you did it, and I don't need to spend time checking every single answer. Oh, yes. Yeah. It's not a bad practice.
Yes. Well, Jessica, thank you so much for your time today and giving us some tips and tricks for recognizing what's going on, and just even giving, I think for some, the freedom to actually check in with themselves and recognize okay, I'm a real person with real needs that need to be attended to. And it's so important that I'm healthy so that I can be a healthy giver.
That's right.
What we do. We are our job is very much serving. And so we need to make sure that we are served too. So thanks for the testimony you shared from the mama and the science bits. All really useful.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Yes.
Fun.
Thanks for tuning into this podcast. Please be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and share with your friends in education so they too can be strengthened and encouraged in living their kingdom identity out loud in this pivotal hour. And please visit kingdomeducators.com to receive your Kingdom Educator Daily Truth Declarations, my encouraging newsletter, and be the first to know about my newest resources online and in-person events. And be sure to find me on the socials at kingdom.educators. Until next time, don't forget you are a history maker, and what you do every day is transforming lives.